What does Eve have in common with the armies of Gideon? Today we're talking about that in Deep Dives episode 50?
50.
50. Wow.
Yay.
So I did not realize, because I never remember the episode number, that we are at 50.
50.
Check that out. 50. I mean, we have more than that because we've been doing this for several years. But as far as in this...
The Deep Dives, as it is named, Deep Dives, iteration, number 50. You know, one thing I've learned, tenacity, is... whatever you do, if you do it tenaciously, something's going to happen with it.
Right.
Listen, get a pen and pencil. Write that down.
Yeah.
You know, write down a piece of paper. Whatever you do it tenaciously, long-sufferingly.
Yep.
And then whatever's supposed to happen is going to happen.
Do it with all thy might.
That's right. All thy might. And something will happen with it.
It's been a long time since we've been in the studio to record an episode. And oddly enough, you know, we're still wearing the same clothes from last episode.
Crazy. I'm trying to wear the same clothes all week. Got one more day.
When I was in college, the first time as undergrad, my freshman year when we had all the student pictures, you know, I had a white shirt, tie, sport coat, all this stuff.
Oh yeah, and Pensacola Christian College, right?
Yep. And then my junior year, I still had that same shirt, same tie, same sport coat. And I'm like, I'm going to wear the same exact thing in this yearbook photo so I can see, like, all things being equal, how have I changed?
Right.
I didn't change much.
You didn't?
Yeah. I didn't change much until I got married. Then I gained a bunch of weight.
Oh, you married a baker, my goodness
Well,
gracious.
she wasn't at the time, but she was still really good.
Oh, okay. Still really good. Always been a good cook she has? Okay, cool. In grade school, I never knew when it was picture day. It's you know, speaking of not changing, it doesn't matter, you know, how long before picture day came that they sent home stuff and said picture day. I wasn't going to remember. So I showed up with a T-shirt, orange T-shirt, surfer T-shirt, and that ended up being... that's who I was, you know. Yeah. That is who I was at the time. So it was appropriate for me to wear that. But I was like, man, I don't, you know, I thought I'd have to have a button down on and everything. But
sometime it'd be funny to bring in a picture of us when we were kids and just flash it up on the screen for the YouTube people.
We can do that very easily. Donna had when I turned 60, September 15th of this year, her and her sister fixed up the living room and didn't allow me to come in it all day. And whenever I came in, they had decorated it and had pictures of me. Which picture was it? It was, I had long blonde hair. Mm-hmm. I think it was my high school senior picture. And it's...
Now, when you say long, what do you mean?
To my shoulders.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, to my shoulders and wings. You know, it was 70s. It was 80s, 82.
I've never had long hair.
It doesn't surprise. I think you probably look exactly like you look now, you know, whenever you were 12.
Yeah.
I mean, in the face. You got a young-looking face.
My daughter said that I've been 40 ever since I was 5.
I think that's pretty accurate as far as I could tell. That's
as soon as
funny.
It starts touching my ears, I can't stand it. It's always been that way.
Well, mine was so long that it wasn't touching my ears. It was all the way over my ears. You know what I mean? It wasn't touching and pricking.
I could not have dealt with that. No, when I think the longest it's ever, like, it used to get long enough for me to comb it. And I used to comb it a lot when I was a kid. But it still never, I never allowed it to get too long because it just always bothered me. Now, there is one, like, 6-month period of my life when I had a flat top.
Oh,
and that was absolutely horrible because my hair is not the kind of hair that lends itself to a flat top.
Is that right?
It had to be held in place with, like, goop and stuff.
Yes.
And that became problematic because I don't like to spend a lot of time doing my hair. And I had to every morning. I had to put the goop in and.
I know you love that.
Yeah, it was absolutely horrible. So I was like, nope,
not going to happen.
Can't do this anymore.
Not going to happen. Well, I told Donna that I'm starting to grow my mullet out again because I'm buying a 2011 Camaro for my brother. And it just goes hand in hand, man. I'm going to have a mullet. You've got to have a mullet when you drive that car.
Yeah.
It's a convertible, too, so it's going to be blowing in the wind, baby. I can't wait.
Goodness. No thanks.
Anyway, we're going to talk more about mullets today. 50th anniversary, right? Our 50th
episode, yeah.
50th episode of Deep Dives Podcast. Congratulations, Josh. Yeah. Congratulations, Chris. I don't know how long Chris has been with us for at least 20?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say? 20 episodes, something like that. It's been going downhill since then. Mm-hmm. I mean, really. What were we thinking?
Yeah. Pure chaos.
Anyway.
I feel sorry for you being locked up in a room with two engineers.
Oh, my gosh, man. Thank you. Thank you for the acknowledgement. I appreciate it. There's times, especially in text. My gosh, you guys. We're on a group text together, and there's times where I just look at it and go, I have no clue what they're saying. Are these misspelled words? Are they words that I don't know? What are they? But you guys are going back and forth like, man.
I'll tell you what's annoying about texting engineering stuff on phones is that the autocorrect library in phones is not calibrated to engineering conversations.
Right.
Because I'll be typing something and it tries to correct it, and I'm like, no. What I typed was a real word. I try to type it again and try to change it back. I'm like, no.
I'm smarter than you are.
Come on, AI. How much empirical data of my conversation do you have to know that this is not what I mean?
Right. I one thing AI has done for me in the last, it's been recently, man, in the last month, I use this thing called Grammarly, and it's embedded in a lot of, I've allowed it to be embedded in a lot of my software. And now I can type something, and in the past, it would highlight the misspelled words.
Uh-huh.
Now, after I get through typing, wherever that is, it thinks, and then it puts a little tab mark at the end of wherever I've stopped. And all I got to do is hit that tab, and it corrects everything. It is life-changing, man. It's awesome.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I just go tab, tab, tab. And then I look at it and go, that's exactly what I meant to say.
See, I've never been able to do the Grammarly apps or something, because you can get that stuff to incorporate itself in your Word documents and things you're typing, but I've never been able to, to allow those into my life because I don't know. Well, so I used to be an English tutor.
See, you don't need it. You don't need that. It's a hindrance for you.
It is.
It's a hindrance. It's a help for me because of.
I like to be in control of what I'm typing, and another thing I find is similar with the autocorrect. Most of what I write is technical.
Yeah.
And a lot of them aren't calibrated for technical writing.
Right. Now, you've trained ChatGPT to be your assistants, right? And it can help you with that kind of thing.
Yeah, I have a couple different threads in ChatGPT. Mm-hmm. One is philosopher, one is engineering assistant, one is theologian,
right?
That kind of stuff. And so I have conversations with them to for different things I do, the engineering assistant, for instance. That ongoing conversation, I'll paste in a bunch of stuff. It's like, hey, can you reformat this to do blah blah blah, and I use that as sort of like a low level assistant, to do very menial tasks for me.
Right. Yeah. I used something the other day. I used ChatGPT the other day for something I've never done, but I've heard you use it to calculate things. Many of us think that it's just a Word document, but that bugger will do a lot of stuff.
They'll even generate code for you.
So Don and I were trying to figure out travel arrangements and the financial. Is it more financial responsible to rent a van or to take the car or even take two cars. If we didn't want to stay where we're going for if I wanted to get back earlier, can we take two cars? And her first response was, "There's no way that's cheaper." And I started thinking about it. I instinctively said, "I'm going to go home and I'm going to go through the numbers." And then I thought, "No, I'm not. I'm going to ask ChatGPT with the data that I have." Because we've rented vans before in the past.
Right.
So I have that data point. Assuming that it's going to cost this much a week, and assuming our cars get 24 miles per gallon, going from Pensacola to Alpharetta, how much will it cost for two cars to go? Or which one is less expensive, renting a van or driving two cars? And by far, it's driving two cars.
Yeah.
And it didn't just say that. It came up with the formula.
Yeah.
Right then I can print out and go, according to my calculations, Donna, it's cheaper to take two cars. It's not me talking. It's the GP dude. I'm off.
Don't blame the messenger.
I'm just saying. And what I learned from that is that
she still got mad at you.
she tried. Here's what we both learned. It's not really the finances that is guiding her thought process. I think she thought it was too. It wasn't that. It was the comfort.
Yeah,
that's what it was, and I totally get it because we take her mom,
right,
and with a van, absolutely, with me driving and her mother and her, a van is so much better,
right.
Because her mom's blind and can't walk, so much better. You know what I mean? Than a car or two cars or whatever. So we at least started. We got our last podcast. We talked about getting a true north, is what I call it. Now we got the true north. Okay. Now I understand what you're saying. It's comfort. Okay. Yeah. Got it. Totally. It's a whole different ballgame. You know what I mean?
That supersedes the economics of
the
issue.
That's right. Because in many relationships, economics is the first thing that come up. Mm-hmm. It's we're always spending money. And we're not yelling at each other. We're having a discussion.
Right.
But it's by default. It's economics.
Yeah.
I knew that it wasn't because there's no way. It's just so everybody knows. Use this as your calculations if you're going to rent a van. It's about $1,000 a week. Mm-hmm. Josh, did you hear me? $1,000.
Oh, I know. I've rented minivans for our annual Christmas trip up to New England to the in-laws.
It equals up to be about with gas. Actually, that's not even with gas. Mm-hmm. That's just with insurance and cost.
Yeah, gas is its own thing.
That's right. Gas is its own thing. Gas kind of equals out because it's if you do 24 miles per gallon, it's about the same with all the cars in the van we're talking about. $1,000 as opposed to less than $200 with gas for two cars.
Yeah.
I mean, that's huge.
Right.
So I'm thinking, well, I've got good news, Don. I got good news. She wasn't very That wasn't good news. So now we know it's about comfort.
Yeah.
And that's what she said. I just like to be comfortable. I want to go on vacation and be comfortable. So anyway.
Have you ever seen the show Mythbusters?
I've seen
you've heard of it.
I've heard of it. And I've seen a couple long time
one
ago.
One of the hosts of it, Adam Savage, he has this saying, I reject your reality and substitute my own. It's kind of the feeling I get there.
That's good.
Who cares if it's cheaper?
This
is what's important.
Now we can have a conversation.
Yeah.
I totally get it. Totally get it.
So here's the funny thing. Like, my wife and I were just having a very similar conversation about just this past week about the differences in our personality and like what her brain prioritizes.
Oh, yeah.
Versus what mine does and everything. And even having that conversation, there was an interesting turn of events that I was not expecting. Because, like, I was explaining to her, like, how my brain works, what information my brain processes.
Prioritizes.
And what my brain prioritizes. And in the action of explaining that, she was getting kind of frustrated because, and I didn't even realize this when I was doing it because in my mind, I'm explaining how my brain works. In her mind, I'm having an argument with her.
I gotcha. Yes.
And I didn't realize that at first until she told me that. She's like, it was starting to stress her out, and I kind of had to back up, like, okay, tell me what's going on. And I found out, like, that conversation was being perceived as an argument.
Boy,
and I'm
interesting.
It's super interesting. Like the way her brain works. And I've told her this too. It's like, so I'm not like, talking behind her back.
Right.
I told her this. I told her this Tuesday.
She didn't listen to the podcast anyway. Whatever.
To me, it seems so chaotic, but simultaneously, it seems so interesting. Like, to me, that conversation that I was having with her, that she was perceiving as an argument, to me, it was so interesting. Like her telling me the processes of her own brain.
Yeah.
So interesting to me, because like how our brains are so not just different in that they do different things, but they're almost like in opposition with each other. Is actually getting into what we're going to talk about today, but yeah, like we talked last episode, about an hour ago, about the nature of truth and how truth is determined everything.
Yeah.
And, one thing that people like me tend to fall into, a trap that we tend to fall into, is that there is only truth that can be explained by scientific means, and that's a fallacy. That's like I said, a trap that we fall into. There's emotional truth. There's ideological truth. There's the way one guy put it. What's his name? He's
Bob Tom. Tim.
Yeah. He's a famous mathematician, philosopher.
Freddie. Fred.
And his name escapes me at the moment. But anyway, he said he asked the question, why is the water boiling? And he said there could be two different answers. It's boiling because I've raised the temperature. We've induced kinetic energy into the molecules, and those molecules are vibrating rapidly, and it eventually results in what we would call boil. He's like, why is the water boiling? Because I want tea. He's like, both are completely different answers, but both are equally true.
Yes,
because it depends on perspective, and this kind of backpacks on what we were talking in the past episode about the nature of truth. It's not just what is scientifically true. There's, in that case, the objective standard was the desire of the person boiling the water. But so bringing it back to my conversation with my wife, it's interesting the contest between our, I don't want to say relative truths, because not relative with respect to what is true, but relative with respect to what our brains prioritize.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway.
Yes. Having that type of insight with the person that you are bonded to is very important. And one of the things that I learned, and even listening to your conversation, it's really kind of the same thing. It's just how things can be totally misinterpreted by accident and not anybody's fault.
Right.
But just where you are at a certain time. For example, I know that whenever Donna is physically caring for her mother, is not the time to ask something that she's going to have to ponder or make a decision on or collaborate with.
Yes.
It's just not a good time.
There is a season.
There's a season, and that season can change very quickly and very often. There's one overall season, but within that season, there can be cold points and hot points and everything else. And those aren't really the good ones either. But sometimes if you're in the situation that we are in, where she lives with her mother and I don't live there right now, sometimes you just have to take advantage of if a very short season, if it's in between a longer season. Does that make sense?
Yes.
There's not always a really good time but you have to make those times or take advantage of the short period of times that you have, right, to have these discussions. So what we did last week was funny enough, I found that if they're not introduced, or if they're introduced, how can I say this? If they're introduced without a long introduction, our conversations go really well. Mm-hmm. Like, she didn't know I was coming over there to have a discussion about transportation or have a discussion about this. But whenever I got there, I saw that I analyzed what was going on. Her mom was in a good place. Mm-hmm. And I just put my hand up. I said, and we went to the bedroom and had a long, very good discussion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whereas if we sat down and I said, Donna, we need to have a talk.
Yes.
Where can you find 20 minutes? I don't know. I don't have 20 minutes.
Yep.
And it's
even
true.
If she did, there would be a dread in the anticipation.
Yes.
It's like, why is he announcing this in advance?
Right.
Is there something wrong?
Right. And my intent would be giving you enough time to prepare to find 20 minutes, but that would have been a task that I put on her.
Right.
See what I mean? 25 years I'm learning these things, Josh.
I almost ruined my relationship with Debbie when we were dating accidentally, because my wife loves the tiramisu from Olive Garden.
Oh boy.
And when we were both students together, I thought, I'm going to surprise her. I'm going to get some tiramisu from Olive Garden to go. I'm going to bring it back to campus, and I'll
good thought.
Surprise her with it.
By the way, high praise from a baker.
Right. Well, she wasn't. So yeah, that was before she was.
Okay.
Yeah, because she didn't really get into the culinary arts thing until 8
Gotcha.
years or so into our marriage.
Okay.
So this was before she really even knew any of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But like all of us, we have the things that we like.
Yes.
And she loves tiramisu from Olive Garden.
And it's good for you.
Oh yeah, totally. And so I went and got some, and I brought it to campus, and I called her up and I said, "Hey, how fast can you get to the Commons?"
Oh boy.
I have something. And I didn't know this. She freaked out. She's like, I guess I can come now. Yeah. And so in my mind, I'm like, this is great. This is going to be a happy time, And I got to the Commons. I met her, and I pulled out the tiramisu and gave it to her. And I could tell walking up to her, something was up.
Mm-hmm.
She told me, she's like, when you called me, I had no idea. Because she doesn't know why I'm calling. I know why I'm calling. So to me, it's like, this is the best thing in the world.
Right.
From her, she's like, her boyfriend just calls up and wants to talk to her right now.
Some kind of tragedy happened.
Either that, or I'm going to break up. Her mind went to, he's mad and he's going to break up with me.
Oh boy.
And so she
surprise tiramisu.
Yeah, and it was the exact opposite. It's like, no, I have a surprise for you that I want to share with you because I love you. Like
I hate you.
And so, because here again, that's how our brain works. It defaults to the negative, right?
So your haste was totally misinterpreted.
Yeah, and so lesson. I don't want to say lesson learned, because I've made that mistake since then,
more than once, I'm sure.
Inadvertently. But lesson noted.
Yes. Yeah, Josh. One of the things that I didn't know that I liked to do this, but I found myself attracted to this behavior. There's times where I find myself in a parking lot of Publix or something. If I've gotten a sandwich from Publix and I'm in a hurry to eat, I'll just go to the parking lot and I'll eat it, and I'll sit and I watch people walk by, and I want people. The sociologist in me likes to see how people interact with each other. And what I've learned from doing that, not just in that situation, but other situations, is how physically, how two people, their body language, everything that they're doing relative to each other, whenever they're conversating with each other, how the same behavior can have almost opposite meanings.
Yes.
Somebody, for example, person A could be telling a story about something that's very exciting, and it looks like they are in the face of the person B, with even pointing their finger, it looks like they're angry. So you have to look at person B to see their language. If they're not backing up or they don't, if you're just looking at person A, it looks like they're about to throw punches.
Right.
Unless you look at person B and they're just kind of doing but if they're backing up or they're turned aside, whatever they are doing defensively, then you know that could be happening. But many times, something that looks like one thing can be totally different or even opposite.
Right.
And it's interesting to me how just without any verbal, without any noise, our body language can speak in such a way that that can. So whatever we're saying, what I take out of that is whatever we're saying, we've got to be careful of how we're standing, because your wife, my wife, whenever I'm talking to her, if I'm all tensed up and everything else, but I'm saying, I love you very much. That's not what she's hearing.
Right.
You know what I mean? She could be hearing, I am out of here, whatever, you know. And I got this from my dad. I'm very like a cartoon character. Whenever I'm talking, I'm using my hands and I'm moving around and I'm getting up, I'm doing all this. And I've tried to stop that. I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to. I really don't know if I'm ever going to be able to. I would love to be able to sit here and have a conversation like this, but I feel like I'm strapped down in a chair most of the time. I need to be moving around. So whenever we're talking to somebody, even we're talking to somebody about Christ or just evangelizing, whatever that means for you, right? Just talking to somebody about your faith. We have to be careful of how we do that with not just our words, but our body and our emotions. And we could be passionate. We're probably going to be passionate about it, but that could be, even if they don't say, I'm feeling like this person is aggressive, it could be interpreted unconsciously as being aggressive. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So anyway, that's a lesson I learned in the parking lot at Publix eating a roast beef sandwich. Feel free to write that down, Chris.
All right, yeah.
All right. Thou shalt not do whatever.
Well, building off of that idea, right, where like the differences in our personality.
Good luck with that. Building off that. Anyway.
No, because I mean, this conversation that wasn't planned about the differences between our personalities and our wives really dovetails into what we're talking about today really nicely. So the hook at the beginning was, what does Eve have to have in common with the armies of Gideon, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And
they go to the same gym.
They go to the same gym, right? So Judges chapter 7, we're exposed to this idea of God's strength versus our strength, right? And so if you're familiar with this account, they're about to go up against the Midianites, who have been and the Amalekites, which have been enemies of Israel for generations, and a very formidable enemy. One of the things that God promised Israel when they got into the promised land, and even before that, he said, I'm going to go before you, I'm going to fight your battles, I'm going to, as you enter into the land that I've promised you, I want you to realize that you are going to be outmanned, outgunned, out-strategized, all this stuff, but I'm going to fight your battles for you, and I'm going to make this happen so that you can, I'm not just promising you this land, but I'm also making that promise come about. Fulfilling that promise. And so here's Israel about to face the Midianites and the Amalekites, and this is Judges 7. Gideon and all the people that were with him rose up early and pitched beside the wall of Harod, so that the host of the Midianites were on the north side of them by the hill of Morah in the valley. By the way, you can go here today if you go to Israel. To this. So this isn't just a story. This is an account of something that actually happened. And the Lord said unto Gideon, the people that are with thee are too many for me to give the Midianites into their hands, lest Israel vaunt themselves against me, saying, mine own hand hath saved me. This is an interesting concept that God is revealing to Gideon, because remember, God is a jealous God. He's also a God that deserves honor and glory and all that stuff. And you see this concept several times in Scripture where God, on purpose, uses something weak so that he gets the glory for it. Because he said, there's too many people, Gideon, because if you beat the Midianites, the accusation will be, or the belief might be that it was your power that did this. And I want you to be clear. I want everyone to be clear that it's my power that did this.
Right.
And so he said, therefore go to and proclaim in the ears of the people, saying, whosoever is fearful and afraid, let him return and depart early from Mount Gilead. And there returned of the people 22,000, and there remained 10,000. The Lord said unto Gideon, people are yet too many. So still too many people. 10,000 still too much. Bring them down to the water, and I'll try them for thee there. And it shall be that that of whom I say unto thee, this shall go with thee, the same shall go with thee, and of whomsoever I say unto thee, this shall not go with thee, the same shall not go. So in other words, 10,000 is too much, Gideon. Take him to this river, and I will try them. And whoever passes the test, they'll go with you. Whoever doesn't, they'll go home. So, verse 5, he brought down the people to the water, and the Lord said unto Gideon, everyone that lappeth of the water with his tongue, as a dog lappeth, him shalt thou set by himself. Likewise, everyone that boweth down upon his knees to drink. And the number of them that lapped, putting their hand to their mouth, were 300 men. But all the rest of the people bowed down upon their knees to drink the water. And the Lord said unto Gideon, so I think from Gideon's perspective, he's like, okay, cool. I'm going to send 300 home, keep the rest. And we often hear this in sermons, right?
Sure do.
God picked the 300 because they were more battle ready, or there's some aspect of their actions that were strategically wise in the context of battle. Like they didn't dunk their heads in the water. They were still watching around them. So there's something about them that made them better suited for battle.
In that case, they're more environmentally aware.
Yeah, they're more environmentally aware.
Situationally aware.
I often think, like, had God picked the other ones, how the sermons would change, right? Because let's say the 300 were the ones that just laid down, dunked their heads in the water. The sermons could be like, God chose those because they were dedicated to the task.
Right.
They put their entire being into what Gideon told them to do.
That's
and so
right.
It's
that's right.
funny playing that that scenario against it, to think like, how would the sermons have changed? Because what you're really doing is oftentimes we tend to put our own spin on God's motives, right? God chose these people because there was a strategic advantage for God choosing those people, and that's not the case here. The reason God chose the 300 goes back to what God had been saying the whole time. Gideon, there's too many people here. I don't want it to be your. I don't want your people to say it was because you outnumbered them that you won the battle. So get rid of the people who are afraid. 10,000 stayed. And God said, that's still too many people, because if 10,000 go up to battle again and you win, you might say, well, these were 10,000 elite soldiers, So go and take them to this river and tell them to drink. And, there's only 300 people left. That's the number I want, because how can 300 people go up against an entire nation of people and win?
Right.
It's impossible. You can call them the most elite Navy SEALs possible, but eventually you're outnumbered and you're outgunned. So, verse 6, the number of them that lapped, putting their hand to their mouth, were 300 men, but the rest of the people bowed down upon their knees to drink water. The Lord said unto Gideon, by the 300 men that lapped will I save you, and deliver the Midianites into thine hand, and let all the other people go, every man to his place. Man, think about this from Gideon's perspective. 300 men, there's no way.
Right.
We have to remember how Gideon was introduced in the book of Judges. He was hiding. He was hiding from, if I remember correctly, he was hiding from the Midianites. He was already afraid of the enemy. And here, God's not really giving him a lot to work with,
right?
When it comes to like overcoming those fears. He's
sure isn't. Taking most of his men away.
Right? It's like, you think you were afraid back then. Look at what's going on now. You're going to be seriously outmanned, and I'm going to make you go fight this really formidable opponent, and you're pretty much screwed. And but he reminds Gideon. He's
That's
like,
the message part. That's a Message Bible version.
the Message translation. Thou shalt be screwed.
Screwedeth.
But God, he says, by the 300 will I save you. And it's intriguing the way God works. And so I want to go back to our conversation about the supposed incompatibilities between our personalities and our wives' personalities. And I would venture to say, I know I say this, that looking at it from a certain perspective, there's an incompatibility in our personalities. Looking at it from a different perspective, it might be, it's more plausible that they dovetail in together nicely. Like where one is weak, the other's strong, and vice versa. Back in the book of Genesis, when God had just created everything, he formed man out of the dust of the ground, and he went through a second creative act where he formed every animal out of the dust of the ground in front of Adam, and Adam named all of the animals. And there is a conclusion in that, which was, there was, all these animals were paired off, but there wasn't anything for Adam to pair off with.
Yeah.
He was alone in creation. And so God, he said, once God led Adam to that conclusion that Adam needs to be completed, God provided for that completion. He created Eve and said, this is a help meet for you. And we often combine that into help meet. The Hebrew word behind that is a word called ezer. And that's a very intriguing Hebrew word, because it brings with it the idea, the definition of something that's strong in light of the other person's weaknesses. So in that being a help meet for Adam, it wasn't like, oh, you need a helper. Here's Eve. As though Eve was like somehow less than Adam or subservient to Adam or something like that. That wasn't the case at all. It's like, Adam, there are points where you are weak. Here's a person that's going to be strong in the face of those weaknesses. You guys complete each other and make a whole unit. And but that word ezer is really important, because God uses that to define himself a lot of times. There's a couple cases in the Old Testament. For instance, when the Israelites went up, I think it was against the Philistines during the life of Samuel, and God miraculously intervened and brought a victory to Israel. Samuel sets up this stone monument and calls it Ebenezer, which means the stone or the rock of my help. That suffix there, ezer, is that same word that God uses to describe Eve, and it's a word that God uses to describe himself. Like, he's strong where we're weak. In the story of Abraham sacrificing Isaac, we have a father sacrificing his innocent son. Immediately after that, the son is removed from the text. Like, we know Isaac came back down the mountain with Abraham. Isaac wasn't sacrificed. We actually spent several episodes talking about this, but Isaac doesn't appear in the text.
Right.
Instead, in the next chapter, the head servant of Abraham, which is named Eliezer, goes and acquires the bride for Isaac. And the next time we see Isaac, it's when Eliezer comes back with the bride and presents it to the son. And we see that as this acting out prophetically a very New Testament idea, where God the Father sacrifices his innocent son in the same space where Abraham sacrificed Isaac. And then as Jesus is taken out of the text. He ascends into heaven. During this period of the church, he says, I'll send a comforter, the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit's job is to acquire the bride for Christ, the church. And when you look at that head servant of Abraham, that name Eliezer, it brings with that idea, Eli, God, Ezer, help, like God is our help. Mm-hmm. Another way that it could be translated is comforter. Mm-hmm. And we see that Eliezer, the head servant of Abraham, fills that symbolic role that the Holy Spirit does in our lives. And all of this is under that umbrella term of Ezer, which God uses to show that Eve is a help meet. She's something that completes Adam. She's strong where he's weak. Mm-hmm. And so when we get back to this narrative in Judges about Gideon and the armies of Gideon, God says there's too many people there, because if you win this battle, it can be argued that you were the ones that did it. And I want it to be clear that strategically you guys are weak. You don't have the ability to do this in your own strength. Just like there's a lot of things in my own life I don't have the ability to do in my own strength. And God whittled that number down from the thousands to 300 people. Not because these were 300 elite soldiers, not because these were 300 people that had some sort of wisdom that or knowledge that other people had. No, it was still 300 people going against a huge army. Mm-hmm. He did it so that he could illustrate again that where Israel is going to be weak, he is going to be strong. Mm-hmm. And he shows us that over and over and over again. We talk a lot of times about the faith that we're called to exercise in our relationship with God, that it's not a faith, it's not a blind faith, it's a faith that's based on empirical evidence. Right. We have all of these instances through the Bible where God not only is an Ezer when the situation just happens to work out that way, but God specifically weakens. In this case, he specifically weakened the armies of Israel so that he could illustrate with extreme certainty that wherever we're weak, he can be strong. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the overarching idea that's being presented in the armies of the army of Gideon, is that God needed to illustrate once again. It's not just that there's a passive weakness in the armies of Israel, but I'm going to make it so abundantly clear by weakening you to the point of being ludicrous, just to illustrate that I'm strong where you're weak. I'm Ezer.
I wonder how many times in our lives that has been the case. That we've been weakened in certain things, God knowing that we were going to make it through whatever, or make it over whatever mountain we were faced with, and it was perceived as God, obviously, because of this.
Yeah.
Having this illness, but continuing to do whatever, or to overcome whatever, or continuing to evangelize while you're in the hospital with cancer, that kind of thing. Weakening us physically or emotionally, spiritually, mentally, whatever, so he can shine through. It's an interesting concept.
Yeah,
it really is. It's something to be considered in our own lives for sure.
Right.
Right.
Well, it gives us confidence because here again, God calls us to a faith based on empirical evidence,
right? And
he gives us a lot of that in Scripture. And that's why I always think it's important in our own lives when God does bring us through something, to make some sort of record of that in our lives, so that the next time that we're faced with something that seems insurmountable, we can go back in our minds and be like, I've been here before, but God brought me through it.
Oh, that's happened in the Old Testament time and time again with monuments being made, right?
Yeah, and God criticized them for not going back to the monuments or tearing the monuments down. And oftentimes they made monuments not just to the good things but the bad things, so that they could go back and remember their own history and remember and remember God's involvement in that history.
Wow. Well, our recent past speaks to that a lot, doesn't it? We had a time in the last 8 years or so that monuments were being torn down.
Yes. Good monuments and bad monuments.
Right.
And there's something to be said for memorializing aspects of our history.
Right. Good and bad.
Yeah. So that we either don't repeat the bad things or we do repeat the good things.
Right. Awesome, Josh. Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Chris, thanks for being here. All right. We'll see everybody soon. 50th episode. This was good.
Yeah.
This was good. Very good. All right, y'all. We'll talk to you soon.
Yep.